Chief of Staff John Kelly told a rapt and silent White House briefing room about military soldiers having their bodies wrapped by heartbroken friends, double-packed in ice and flown across the Atlantic to meet grief-stricken families. He recalled his son's 2010 death from a roadside bomb blast in Afghanistan and a close friend, Gen. Joseph Dunford, devastating him with the news. Kelly then told the press corps he left the West Wing and walked past the tombstones in Arlington Cemetery just this week, fuming after a Democratic congresswoman accused President Donald Trump of hurting a family in a condolence call. Many of those under the tombstones, he said, were soldiers following his orders as a military general. In an extraordinary performance that mixed poignant experiences, political strategy, nostalgia for a less hostile society, and a seeming rebuke of his boss, Kelly accomplished what few others have been able to do: forcefully vouch for Trump in a moment of political peril. The president had made or faced a number of startling accusations in a 48-hour span. He first said previous presidents did not call families of dead soldiers, which was rebutted by their aides. Then, a congresswoman and the family of a slain soldier charged Trump with being insensitive in a phone call to the widow, saying Trump left her in tears. Finally, the father of another dead soldier accused Trump of offering $25,000 and then not paying. Trump wrote the check this week upon the Washington Post story being written. It was promised in June. Kelly, long reticent of talking about his son's 2010 death, was not thrilled that Trump made his personal devastation a political football, said several people who know him. But his boss was in a jam, and he decided to come into the briefing room after telling others Trump was being treated unfairly and that he hated seeing dead soldiers become a political cudgel. What he wanted to convey, one administration official said, is that this was a serious time and attacks were being lobbed that were not factual or fair from people unqualified to make them and who had not suffered. He asked only reporters who knew a Gold Star family to raise their hands with questions. With a no-nonsense demeanor and a voice that barely moved tone, Kelly ticked through criticisms of the president and then rebutted them, casting Trump's actions and words in a far kinder light. The chief of staff said it was actually him whose son, Second Lieutenant Robert Kelly, was killed under former President Barack Obama, who told Trump that previous presidents hadn't always called families. Trump then blurted that information out at a news conference on Monday, trying to defend himself from a question about why he hadn't called families of soldiers killed 12 days earlier in an ambush in Niger. Kelly reiterated that Obama had not called him after his son's death, but that he had gotten a letter and that he didn't consider it disrespectful. Kelly told Trump what to say on the call to the widow of Sergeant David Johnson that was decried as insensitive. And, in fact, he said he advised Trump not to call the families of the soldiers slain in Niger at all but was overruled by the president. "There's no perfect way to make that phone call," Kelly said. "When I took this job and talked to President Trump about how to do it, my first recommendation was he not do it. Because it's not the phone call that parents, family members, are looking forward to." Trump expressed his condolences in the best way that he could, Kelly said. The former Marine general reflected on what Dunford, his best friend and now the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, told him when his son was killed. He said, he was doing exactly what he wanted to do when he was killed. He knew what he was getting into by joining that 1%. He knew what the possibilities were because we're at war, and when he died, in the 4 cases we're talking about in Niger, and in my son's case in Afghanistan, when he died he was surrounded by the best men on this earth, his friends. That's what the president tried to say to 4 families the other day. News that Rep. Frederica Wilson, D-Fla, had listened in on the call and described Trump as bluntly saying Johnson, the fallen soldier, knew what he signed up for, left Kelly stunned and broken-hearted, he said. Kelly did not mention that the Johnson family was also upset by Trump's call and had said the president was insensitive. The chief of staff also seemed to admit the president was far from perfect in an implicit rebuke. He told the briefing room that women were once sacred in the United States, not mentioning his boss's famous boast that he could sexually assault them because he was famous. He mentioned that Gold Star families were also once untouchable, not mentioning the president's lengthy imbroglio with the Khan family last summer after the GOP convention. He talked about the dangers of military service without mentioning that his boss mocked Sen. John McCain for being held hostage and tortured in Vietnam. Gold Star families, I think, that left at the convention over the summer, Kelly said, not mentioning Trump's name. What was most effective about Kelly's delivery, observers said, were the personal experiences that he invoked to defend a president who avoided military draft with bone spurs. Kelly began with language that was simple and blunt, walking through what happens after an American service member is killed, describing how the fallen are repeatedly packed in ice before being embalmed as they make the journey home to Dover Air Force Base. He described the process by which families are informed, which he experienced firsthand with his son. An officer arrives at the home, waits for the first light to come on and knocks on the door to deliver the devastating news. The officer then stays, sometimes for several days, as calls flood in. Kelly said he spent 90 minutes on Wednesday in Arlington National Cemetery, reflecting on the situation among the graves of America's fallen, including some who were killed under Kelly's command. Kelly's plea, it was quickly apparent, was about more than defending the president. Let's not let this maybe last thing that's held sacred in our society, a young man, young woman, going out and giving his or her life for our country, let's try to somehow keep that sacred, Kelly said.